Tom Moore is a sports columnist for the Bucks County Courier-Times. He appears via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. His column discusses a possible shift already for the 76ers offseason. As he says, star hunting could turn into star developing. You know, a lot of people think that the sentence ended right there, Peter, that we are star hunting,
That's
period.
the key. There's star developing as well.
But are they now changing the course of the offseason? Tom Moore joins us now on the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Tom, welcome back. How are you, pal?
Fine, thanks. How you guys doing today?
Doing all right. So free agency is just beginning, but it almost feels like it's already over. But for some people out there, the Sixers tried to land the star hunting portion of Brett Brown's comment, but he also said star developing. Does it look like this offseason is going more down the developing road?
Well, I mean, if you can't acquire a star, the only other way, and we discussed that, on draft night, is to develop what you have, which would be, Embiid getting in better shape, Simmons, developing a 15-foot jumper, and he's not a star yet, but, star potential, or a guy who's the number one pick in the draft, Markelle Fultz, kind of getting back to playing the way, Markelle Fultz, who was the number one pick in the draft, played in college, and the potential that he showed. And then signing J.J. Redick to a one-year deal leads you to believe they're going to go down the same path that Brian Colangelo used last year when they brought in Amir Johnson and Redick to preserve that cap space. So my guess is with the $13 million or so that's left, they may try to bring a bench guy, Wayne Ellington, Jamal Crawford, somebody like that, in, and maybe a backup center, Kyle O'Quinn, somebody like that, on one-year deals, and that way they would have the money, for a max contract in 2019. Now, whether they'd be able to land somebody in 2019, and whether those people have already decided, or it looks like they've decided what they're going to do, that may be another issue.
Yeah, you hear that old phrase, Tom, of kicking the can down the road. Is that what this offseason feels like, that they're kicking the can down to the offseason of 2019? Or is there something they can still do this offseason to elevate them from a 52-win second-round team to potentially, you might not be a title contender in today's game because of what the Warriors are doing, but if you win the East, I guess you could say you're a title contender.
Right. I mean, they could trade. That there are some 20-point scorers in the NBA who could probably be had via trade. Somebody like the Blazers, C.J. McCollum, I think he has $84 million left over the next 3 years. The Raptors, DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry could be available. But if you're going to make a trade like that, you've got to match the salary, the salary going out with the salary going back in to preserve that cap space, beyond next summer. So 2019, the free agent class, you're talking Klay Thompson, who at least it certainly sounds like most likely he's going to re-sign with Golden State. Jimmy Butler, who could be available now or at the trade deadline this year, doesn't sound like he wants to re-sign with the Timberwolves. He's another scorer. I'm not sure. It has a reputation of a bit of a me-first player, and maybe that's what the Sixers need. But the chemistry here is so good, I think you have to be careful, with that. Kevin Durant can opt out of his contract. He signed a 1-1, meaning a 2-year deal with an opt-out after 1 year with Golden State. Would he want to come here? I'm not sure. And Kawhi Leonard, who it certainly seemed like he wanted to go to L.A. before, and now with LeBron there, I can't imagine that's decreased. So, to me, the danger is, if you do that and you can't get a free agent next summer, you have to spend that money, because in 2020, Ben Simmons is a free agent, and you're certainly going to try to, extend him with a significant contract, just like they did with Joel Embiid, whose extension kicks in, this year in 2018-19. So you might end up having to make like an uneven trade where you send out $5 million in salary and bring back $25 million or something like that to use that cap space if you can find somebody. Now, you can't do it this summer, because signing J.J. Redick, you used up half of your available cap space. They were at about $26 million, and now they're at about $13. So they could choose to go down that road of an uneven trade next summer if they strike out in free agency. But, Brett Brown aimed high. He swung for the fences, and, it sounded like they might have a chance with LeBron, but it turns out it sounds like they probably really didn't have a chance with LeBron. So they got their meeting, and I think as they were heading out the door, the statement came out that, he was signing with the Lakers. So, now you're trying to, salvage this season and really almost, certainly right now they're not as good as they were at the end of last season with Bellinelli and Ilyasova leaving. The bench is much weaker. I think you need a backup center. I would argue that you need a backup center. That's why I think O'Quinn's a little more physical than Amir Johnson. And Rashawn Holmes, I think, is more like a 4.5. He's really not a defensive rebound or shot blocker type guy. He's very athletic. He fills the lane. He brings energy. So they have some holes to fill. They need a scorer. They got Redick back, but they really need a scorer, and they need to get more athletic on the wing. So, there are a lot of needs for $13 million plus a $4.49 million exception that they have to address, in the next couple months.
Tom, what's your takeaway about that meeting with LeBron's people? Do you find that there's anything positive or negative from that meeting? Because there's a lot of folks out there that are suggesting that the Sixers have egg on their face. It was a courtesy meeting. They never had a chance. But Mike and I are going back and forth on, the fact that just a couple of years ago when they won 10 games, you wouldn't have even envisioned that they'd be able to have a meeting like that.
I mean, I guess that's sort of a consolation prize that you were invited. You're one of, whatever it was, 3 or 4 teams that were invited, although they did not get an audience with LeBron. It was with his agent, Rich Paul, who is Ben Simmons' agent. So, I mean, I think he's pretty familiar with what the Sixers do and how things go here. But, yeah, I mean, I don't think they're really – I mean, it's people wanted to believe, and there were rumblings that, boy, that he's serious about the Sixers and, really thinking about coming here. But I thought, honestly, guys, I thought he was really going to re-sign with Cleveland, do this for one more year, and then next summer be in the same boat, and then see what happens then, where Kawhi ends up, et cetera, and make up his mind. But I guess he really wants to be in L.A. I mean, certainly the Lakers are not farther along than the Sixers in terms of talent-wise at this point. Now, if they get Leonard, that's different. But, at this point, they're not any further along than the Sixers. And they're young, and, they have Golden State and Houston in the West, who are going to be really difficult obstacles. I mean, they could lose in the second round next year, and that would not be a surprise. So, yeah, I don't think they ever really had a chance. Maybe they thought they had a chance, or were perhaps even led to believe or wanted to believe that they had a chance, but it sounds like that really was never the case.
Yeah, and I should point out that when LeBron signed with Cleveland, he wasn't there. That was done through his agency and through his group.
Yeah, that's what David Griffin had said the other day, was when he decided to sign with Cleveland, he was not in that meeting. It was just Rich Paul and LeBron's people. So I guess, as LeBron gets older here, he kind of tells Rich Paul, hey, what he wants to do. But one thing, Tom, the Sixers are now left. You said they have $13 million, an exception. They got to figure out what to do. But it's good. One area that's a little hairy is they lost Bellinelli and Ilyasova, 2 very low-paid guys that gave you a lot of production. Do the Sixers think that they have in-house fixes for replacing those 2 guys?
Yeah, probably not. At least not for both of them. I think that's why they need to bring in somebody like Wayne Ellington, Philly guy from Episcopal Academy, played for the Heat last year, a scorer, wing athlete, 31 years old. He could really help them off the bench. Jamal Crawford's another guy. He's a little older, but same thing, kind of instant offense off the bench. They got both of those guys, Ilyasova and Bellinelli, after they were bought out by the Hawks, so they only had to play them the prorated veterans minimum over the last month and a half or 2 months of the season, and they really did bolster the bench, because if not, you're talking about wing guys. Justin Anderson, when he gets healthy from his surgery, to repair those shin splints, a tibia, I guess it was. You're talking Korkmaz. You're talking Timothy Luwawu-Cabarrot. They have a lot of guys. Zaire Smith, the rookie, who I think they're going to kind of bring along slow as he transitions from power forward at Texas Tech to shooting guard in the NBA. There isn't a lot of experience off the bench. I mean, T.J. McConnell would be, I guess, the most experienced guy you'd probably have off the bench, assuming Redick starts again. So they really need to add some pieces. Jonah Bolden, who they drafted 13 months ago in the second round, who's a very athletic power forward. He's playing in Israel. I could see him possibly being the backup to Saric. That might be one thing, and maybe play some center if they go to a small lineup. But I'd like to see him get more of a interior defender, more of a physical presence in somebody like Kyle O'Quinn, because when Embiid leaves the floor, the level of the defense just drops off immediately. Teams just go right down the lane because there isn't that presence in the lane. I would assume that Amir Johnson, would not be back, and if he's looking at other teams, they might sign a veteran minimum deal, perhaps even with the Lakers. So they do have some needs to address. And, I think what's happening here, guys, too, I think is maybe the Sixers weren't as far along in the rest of the league's eyes as it seemed like they were here in Philly. Let's put it that way, in terms of people wanting to come here, willing to come here for less. Where, you see with LeBron now, all of a sudden Rondo's going there and Caldwell Pope's going there in one-year deals, JaVale McGee, all these veteran guys. So their bench, their second unit, they have a lot of experience. And the Sixers, they need some help right now to get back, to me, to where they were when they won 52 games in the first round series over the Heat.
So, Tom, where do you think the Sixers currently stand on trading for Kawhi? Because we've heard all these possible packages out there and what's being offered, and yet Mike raised a good point. Now with the Cousins move at Golden State, you might kind of throw up the white flag and go, you know what, we're not going to win the championship this year anyway. Why would we give up everything for a guy that there's no guarantee he'll stay?
You talking about the Sixers?
Yes.
Yeah, I just don't think, if he's not going to stay, and it just doesn't make sense to me. I know Brett Brown probably thinks he could convince him to stay with his rep. He was there in San Antonio in 2011 when they picked Leonard in the middle of the first round, and he was the guy who did the most work with him developing. That was his specialty. And then I guess with Simmons and Embiid here, you can probably say, hey, I think we can convince him to stay. But if the reports are true that it's going to cost you Covington, Saric, and 2 or 3 first rounders for what could be a one-year rental, that doesn't make sense to me. I know you want to believe, and I know you want to do something, and the expectations are high here. But I just think that when you do risk-reward there, is he going to be happy here? Is he going to be healthy here? Is he going to play? If he wants to be somewhere else, I just don't think that's a prudent way to operate. At this juncture. Now, if he says coming in, hey, my mind, I'm wide open, I would consider re-signing here, that might be a different thing. But if he says, look, I want to be in L.A. with LeBron and play for the Lakers, in my hometown, I just don't see how you can give up so many assets and then have a one-year rental if you don't win the championship, which, like you said, even if, let's say, you play the Celtics in the conference finals for argument's sake, I don't know that that's enough to justify. And then you wouldn't have Covington, and you wouldn't have Saric, and you wouldn't have those picks. I just think you have to be smart, and I think that's probably a road best not traveled at this point.
Last one for Tom Moore. We appreciate him jumping on the Boardwalk Honda hotline with us as always here. Has long time covered the Sixers. Fultz, obviously, he's the wild card in all this, right? Do you think they have an idea of which Fultz they're going to get back?
Well, I know they're hoping to get the guy that they saw, in Summer League last year, where his shot looked okay. He didn't necessarily make all his shots, but his form was good. He was confident. He was, kind of cocky, he was driving the lane and so on. But I think after last year, I think to be reasonable, I think, if he could play 18 to 20 minutes a game, be the backup point guard, and if he shoots well enough, then you can play him a little bit alongside Simmons. But if his shot still isn't there, or he isn't confident enough, I think you're going to have a hard time, playing him alongside Ben Simmons. If you have two guys who can't shoot the ball, it's just going to make it too easy on the defense. So, I think it's too early to give up on him. But I think to assume that he's going to jump back in September at training camp and act like last year didn't happen, and be an 18 point and 5 rebound guy. I think he can get to the basket. I don't think he's ever lost that. He's very creative. He's very athletic. He can create shots for himself and his teammates. But I think we saw even in the playoffs, he just kind of wasn't ready for physical tough basketball and really only played more than 4 minutes in the first game against Miami, played sparingly in games 2 and 3, and then sat out the final, I guess it was 7 games of the playoffs when Brett Brown, and rightly so, went with T.J. McConnell. So, I think this year could be a transition year to kind of get him back to where he needs to be. But to think he's going to play like the first pick in the draft, a year ago, you would expect in terms of putting up big numbers and starting and playing 30 or 35 minutes. I think that's probably asking a lot at this point.
All right, that could be one of the bigger stories at training camp when they meet in October. Tom Moore, of course, joined us here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline, and we appreciate him jumping on board as always. Thank you, Tom.
All right, guys, have a great 4th.